Hi everybody and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where we discuss, demonstrate and elaborate on your Pro Tools questions put to us in the official Avid Pro Tools support forum in Facebook land. My name is Dave Phillips, audio engineer and lecturer for Point Blank Music Schools in the UK, and the two geniuses joining me as ever are Anders at Tonkraftwerk in Austria and lecturer for Siegen University in Germany.
Hello.
And Andy Hageman, who is Avid's audio curriculum manager and master of all instructors, and he's all the way over in Tokyo. Hi, Andy.
How's it going?
Now, what we do every day is we wade in on the forum posts ourselves to throw our 2 cents in, but there's generally so much noise in the group and nuance in the circumstances that the right answers aren't always highlighted, and often there isn't enough to clearly present the answer anyway. A part of our job as lecturers and trainers is to take complex issues and boil them down with clear explanations and demonstrations in context, and that's what we hope to do here today. So today's subject was inspired by Dana all the way back in episode 13 or 2021.5 if we go by Anders' episode naming protocol, who asked about matching audio to session tempo and the other way around. And Dana's question in the context of today's discussion is, I have used Identify Beat and will be using beat detectives to separate the transients as shown in the attached video tutorial. He's referring to an SAE Institute video. But what I need to know is how I can perform tempo changes where you can make everything one tempo. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today looking at Beat Detective, how we can use Beat Detective to generate bar and beat markers off of existing audio, and hopefully how we can get to the answer to Dana's question: how can we make an existing performance all one tempo? So we're going to toss over to Andy, who's going to tell us all about this.
Now, so the cool thing about Beat Detective is that it does so many different things. The terrible thing about Beat Detective is that it does so many different things. And what we're going to show here is how to align, basically, in this case, MIDI with audio in Beat Detective. And let me just start off by showing you a little bit about what this session is. So I've got a drum folder over here. And if I open that up, you're going to see I've got, just a very small number of drum tracks. So let's take a listen to that real quick. So yeah, it's pretty good. A little bit of a shuffle in there. Let's add the bass, which is not a folder track, just a separate track there. And let's see how they're working together. So far, so good. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add boom. Now, boom is a cool little drum pattern, kind of TR-808, TR-707 kind of drum emulation. It looks like this. This is what the plugin looks like. And so it's a matrix kind of a drum machine, and it's really good for creating, those kind of drum machine kinds of grooves. So let me go ahead real quickly, and we'll solo just this. Sounds fine. There's no groove in it, which is kind of the point of boom, to be quite honest. So if I play the drums along with boom, they're the same tempo, but they're not working together at all. Now, like we used to say, it sounds like sneakers in a dryer. Okay, there's all sorts of misalignments. So what we're going to do real quickly here, I'm going to close this because I don't need any more. I
love that analogy. I'm going to steal that.
Sneakers in a dryer. I want to get boom to play well with the live drums. Now, I could go the other way, right? So the cool thing about Beat Detective is you can align MIDI to audio, audio to MIDI, audio to audio, all this stuff. Basically, you can align anything to anything. But let's assume in this particular example that I like the sound of the drums, I like the feel of the bass, I want to add boom, but it's not playing well with it. Okay, so we need to create something that allows me to groove together. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Event, and open up Beat Detective. And the shortcut for those of you who are shortcut fanatics,
Aren't we
yes,
all?
are we all? Is Command 8, and that will open this guy up.
And that's
Now,
that's Command 8 on the numerical keypad as well, specifically.
Yes, Command 8 on the numeric keypad. Very good. Now, Beat Detective is a cruel mistress. It will burn you on the details if you get any small thing wrong, especially at the beginning of the process. And people make a mistake. The first mistake they make is in the selection. They just gloss over. Right now, Beat Detective is recalling the last selected area that I used when I was using Beat Detective. It has nothing to do with this session, okay? So it thinks that whatever it is that I have selected, which is nothing at this point, is bar 790 beat number 2. That is not the case. Now, what I've done to make life a little bit easier for me is I've already done identify beat, which we learned about a couple episodes ago. And so if I go ahead here and I select this, I've got a nice 8-bar loop. And this is a real 8-bar loop, again, because I did identify beat. This starts at bar 1 and ends at bar 9. I need to make sure that those numbers are reflected here. They won't automatically be. How many times have I said this? Like 5. Why? Because I've gotten completely burned by this. One way that you can do that is to type it in. The other way to do it, since I've already done the groundwork in with identify beat, is I could go ahead and capture the selection and I'll just go ahead and pull these in. The second thing that I have to do is I have to listen. So let's take a listen to it again. And Dave, I'm going to throw this to you. You tell me the smallest increment note that you think is in the drum sub.
No pressure. For the groove, I'd be saying 16ths.
100% right, 0% wrong.
I'm not sure how that kind of ghosty. I can't remember what it's called. The snare roll is done.
So basically, so that you bring up something. So like the little drum rolls and the presses and stuff like that. It just gets ignored. Basically,
is it a roll? Is it referred to as a roll?
It's a roll. Yeah. But the notes that are critical to the groove go down to a 16th note. So that's the smallest increment that is musically significant when it comes to the groove. So now we've done this. To be honest, most of our work has been done. And that's the good news. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to bar beat marker generation. I'm going to select only the clips that have a real kind of an impact on the groove. And to me, generally speaking, I use the kick, the snare, and the hat. Those are kind of my big 3 in terms of where does the groove live. I tend to stay away from overhead and room mics, and talkback mics, obviously, because those are going to be delayed, and I don't want that. So usually I stick with the kick, snare, and hat. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and select those. I've got those selected. I'm going to go ahead and bar beat marker generation. I will do analyze. And then now I'll go up here and bring my sensitivity up. And you're going to see that progressively tiny little beat markers show up. And if I go up high enough, I'm going to get a whole boatload of them. And you can go too crazy on this. So let's go ahead. I'll zoom in here real quickly. And I'll zoom up my view. There, so we can see everything. And you can see here it's marking stuff. And the stuff that he's marking is not on the grid. Okay, it's off the grid. And we're going to change the grid to match the audio that's here. So let's see here. We'll go ahead and bring this up just a little bit more so you can really see clearly what's going on. There we go. And you can see I've got some tiny little notes here. Let's see. That is significant. So let's bring this up a little bit. There we go. I'm starting to pick these guys up. And you can go too crazy. Trust me, you can go too crazy. Now, this one never does get picked up for whatever reason. I don't know why, but we can always go in and you can add beat markers at any location that you want to, and you can move them around if they're not in the right place. Obviously, it's pretty close. And in a perfect world, I would go in here and I would get really, really specific. Okay. In this particular case, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to stick right around here because the only thing that I'm missing are these kind of little ghosted snare tracks, and that's not really hugely impactful for me. And so what I'll do is I'll zoom out here. Now, the last thing, and what really is going to do it for me, is I am going to create bar beat markers. Okay, so let's take a look at my rulers. And there's my tempo ruler, and I'm going to expand that so you can see it. So right now it's a flat tempo, just a single tempo. And I'm going to generate, so that the mode is over here in the far left, and then in the right lower hand corner is whatever action you want to take. So I'm going to generate, boom, and it's going to ask me a question. You're about to enter bar beat markers into the tempo ruler, which might move material on tick-based tracks unless you preserve their absolute sample position. Do you want to preserve their tick position, which means move them, or do you want to preserve their sample position, which means don't move them? In this particular case, yes, I want to move those notes so that they follow. And so I'm going to go ahead here, click OK. And now you can see that it's still a 9-bar loop, but these are all the tiny little things that are happening inside that groove. And let's see how lucky we were, working very quick and very dirty. Nothing's changed with the drums. Let me add boom. And now you're having a conversation. I can take out the live drums. And what's happening is, because the boom is a MIDI instrument following the MIDI tempo, I've basically pulled the life out of this live drummer, created a very accurate tempo map, and I probably in the real world would go in here and tweak a couple little things, make sure all my beat markers are in the right place. But this has gone a long way. In just a couple of minutes, boom, job done.
Dave, you go ahead.
Yeah, there's just a couple of caveats that I'd like to put in. This is obviously as intricate as you can get, because we're taking the groove from multi-tracked audio, and we're making a 16-based. We're taking a 16-based groove and making a tempo map out of that. If you're wanting to just grab the individual beats of the song, you just have to select 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 beats, don't you?
Yeah, actually, all you need to do is, instead of, you can do it, the selection part stays exactly the same. Don't mess with that.
Yeah.
All you need to do is then you could say go into bars.
Exactly.
You can see right here that it's just changed basically its resolution. Now it's not going to pull the groove. It is, all of your bars, or sorry, in this case, all of your beats will line up, but like intricate stuff like your 16ths and 32nds and all that stuff won't. If you want to go with bars, then there you go.
Yeah, so that's
now,
that's as simple as it gets, because this was Dana's question. How can I get a tempo from a song? I think essentially, and he wanted to generate bars out of that. So this is as simple as it gets, isn't it? You just analyze the track and set your transient markers on each of the beats. Oh, sorry, each of the downbeats of the bar, and then click generate, and it will just generate those bar markers.
It's a great point. So let me undo what I just did. So right now I've undone what I just did here. I've still got my analysis here, so I haven't undone that. If you want to create just individual, relatively coarse measurements on the bar, then this is what you'll get. And there's tiny little variations, very, very tiny variations between those. And your click will follow and all your stuff will follow in. So that will give you a rough tempo map for things like click tracks and stuff like that.
From bar to bar.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the other caveat is that you've generated that bar out of a collection of 3 tracks. The technique is exactly the same if you were just working on a stereo stereo track.
There is if when you're dealing with multiple tracks, there's a more advanced workflow that you can work into called collection mode. And if anybody's interested in us doing a show on really getting deep with Beat Detective, put it in the comments, and we can talk about collection mode with multi-track drums in another show. We could definitely do that.
Yeah,
but that's definitely digging deep into Beat Detective.
And as Andy mentions here, we could probably do a couple of shows about Beat Detective. That's how complex it is. And to get to Dana's question again, if you could show Beat Detective again here, Andy. So if you don't have the faintest idea what the tempo is, you haven't done an identify beat before starting to generate your bar and beat markers, you should use your ears to make a selection. And that's the critical part, as Andy said here, having the start beat and the end of the beat, how many bars those are. You have to manually think about that, and your selection, like Andy said in the beginning here, that's the vital part. If you get that right, then you can analyze anything, most anything. And of course here, also the capture selection might work for you if it's almost lying on the grid, but you have to visually and audibly verify that your selection is valid. Never ever look on the bar and beats line where they are, because you're trying to adjust those, so don't trust them. Trust the audio.
Because this is still a quantizing workflow, so it's still going to be moving something in relation to something else, snapping something to something.
And we're moving the bar and beats grid, the lines that you're looking at, right?
Yeah, this gets to the part where he wanted to use Beat Detective to make everything one tempo. But the last part of his question was, how can I perform tempo changes where you can make everything one tempo?
I think, Anders, your session is good for that, right?
Okay, so what I think Dana wants to do is use Beat Detective to extract a bar and beats grid for a song that he doesn't know the tempo of. And I have a little drum selection here, and I'll just play right through it once. Okay, so we can hear that it's a 4-bar selection here, and but it doesn't match the grid. Obviously, it's longer than the 4 bars, or actually shorter than the 4 bars, because it starts ahead of bar 5. So I'll just open up Beat Detective here and go to bar and beat marker generation. And as we talked about when Andy demonstrated Beat Detective, getting the correct selection is vital here. So I'll set the start bar beat to bar 1 and the end bar beat to bar 5. So that will tell Pro Tools all it needs to know to be able to extract a tempo from this selection. And as you could hear, the drums were actually fluctuating a bit. It wasn't a constant tempo through this. So the next step for me is to analyze the selection here. I'm just going for bars resolution, because that's all I care of. So with a little bit of fiddling around now, I've managed to get a bar and beat markers that actually look like they belong where they should belong. And I'll press generate and preserve the sample position like Andy just did, and hit OK. And that will create a tempo map for me. And I'll turn on the metronome now to listen through it and see if this works. So there was one thing that was slightly off. I think that's the one. I'll just get rid of that one. I think we'll be fine anyway. That actually made it worse.
You could undo and then just manually shift that bar and beat marker to line up.
Okay, maybe I should go back again and do that. 1, 2. that's the one that's wrong, right? And this one. That's also wrong. Maybe if I generate now, what do you think, guys? Yeah. Woo! I got it to work. So the reason why Andy is smiling all of the time here, he's making fun of me with.
I love you, man. Come on.
Actually, Dave, for once, he's actually edited when I make a mistake, an error. And what you didn't see as the audience here is that I screw this up maybe 4 times. And it's a 4-bar loop. And so Andy, is this the best tool to extract a tempo from a stereo file?
It is not. It is definitely not. It is designed for detailed groove work, not for rough tempo maps. For rough tempo maps, identify beat is the way to go.
And I would probably have made these 4 bars of identify beat in like 13 seconds or something.
I know,
right?
I mean, it can be done. You know, you've just shown that it can be done. The problem is that it's unbelievably painful to start with. You've got to know how long the piece of audio is in musical bars. So if we're talking a 3.5 minute song, you have to know exactly how many bars you're using. And then you've got to go through this workflow. And I think the best thing with Beat Detective is doing it 4 bars at a time. Certainly not doing it for everything at the same time.
The longer you go with Beat Detective, the more you could run into confusion. So you generally take it in smaller chunks. Now, this workflow's not quite done yet, though, right?
No. So what I will do now, because I'm constantly changing tempo here, and Dana, he wanted to have one continuous tempo with his audio. So I'll just turn off Beat Detective. And basically what I have now is a very detailed tempo map of the drums. And it basically is somewhere around 89 to 95 BPM because he fluctuates in the tempo. So what I can do now is if I chuck this track into Elastic Audio, and I'll use Rhythmic plugin right now, and it quickly made a small analysis of this. And I will also change this track to ticks based right now. So currently, it basically plays the way it is, and the bar and beats grid we have adapted to this audio. So if we now erase all of...
Just one second, Anders. Before you erase anything, could you just switch over to a warp view?
Yeah, sure.
Because I just want to show what's going on. So with Elastic Audio mode on, each of those warp anchors is now locked to a specific bar and beat timing grid.
Actually, those at this point, those are not warp markers. Those are analysis markers that aren't lined up yet. So what you're going to want to do, there are only at this point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 warp markers. The rest of those lines are event markers that won't change anything.
But my point is that with the track in Ticks mode, with the track in Elastic Audio mode, those anchors are locked to the MIDI grid. So now when Anders does his magic...
Yeah, so what I will do is now I will just take all of my little tempo events and delete them and set one tempo. So all of these guys that are now actually on a beat, like this is on the second beat and this is on the third beat and fourth and so on, those will move with the grid and the grid will become one size. So it will actually time stretch every little bit here. So I'll just select these like I just did and hit delete. And as you could see, we got some movement here. And these lines that are anchored with this triangle, the warp marker down below, they are still on the grid lines. As you can see, everything is now in 92 BPM. I could set this to be, just to prove my point, I will just make a tempo change here at the start and set a new tempo, like a tempo 100, because we were nowhere close. We were between 89 and 100. So I'll set this to 100 BPM at the start. And as you can see, all of my audio now shifted. And let's listen to the drums with the click. So it's all now playing back in one tempo, at tempo 100. And that's how you can conform all of your audio that actually had tempo variations are now in one tempo. So it basically is killing all of these drifts in the tempo, and that's how you can solve your problem, Dana. I hope you could use some of that.
But I think that the problem is actually solved best with Identify Beat, isn't it? Beat Detective isn't for this thing, and I have a theory. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So in Dana's post, he was referring to an SAE Institute video, and I think the video started off showing him how to do this stuff, and then the guy said, I'm going to show you how to do what we were just talking about in the next video. But then there wasn't another video. And I have a theory that the guy did the Identify Beat thing and started off with the best of intentions, and then realized, I can't do what I want to do, and I'm just not going to tell anyone.
That might be the case.
But hence no more video.
So Dana, to sum it up, use Identify Beat, like we did in episode 12. When did we do this? So use Identify Beat to set every bar on a new tempo, and then you can, if you absolutely need one tempo, just chug your tracks into Elastic Audio and make them all tick based, and then change to one tempo.
Exactly right. And if I can jump in on a couple things. First of all, I think that having a static tempo is in many styles an overrated goal. Obviously in classical music, you can't do it. Obviously, most jazz, you can't do it. In most world music, you wouldn't do it. And even in dance music, small tempo changes can be energizing, right? Too much, obviously, and you run risks in a practical sense. But I think we quantize the life out of things too easily, right? Yeah. That's my soapbox. I'm off of it. But also understand the audio that you're working on. Elastic Audio is fantastic for basses, strings, vocals. It's not great for drums. And that's where Beat Detective, if I was going to set a drum track as just, basically quantize a drum track, I would do that with Beat Detective because it doesn't stretch things. It cuts and it moves things around, because stretching drums gives me an unrealistic kind of a feel.
Yeah, the reason why I did it now in Elastic Audio was because of how I interpreted the original question. I think he had a stereo file of music. And of course, I think you're right, Andy, here. Would I do this a lot of the times? No, but there are occasions where I have to get two songs to blend together. Or I have to adopt something to a particular tempo because of something is maybe cut to a tempo or working with video. And it's great to know how to use the tool, even if it's musically not ideal for every setting. But there are occasions where you might want to use these techniques.
No, but just know that there's different tools for different levels of work. And Beat Detective is not the right tool for many kinds of levels of work.
No, and choosing the right tool for the job is part of experience, isn't it?
It is super important.
Sorry to interrupt you here, but I think that's one of the things that makes Pro Tools so interesting to work with, because there are a lot of tools that are doing very similar things, but will get you slightly different results. And one is slightly better for this, and one is slightly better for that. And to know your tools and how to use them is absolutely vital to get the best results. And there are so many techniques and workflows around stuff like this. So it's easy to get confused.
Do you know, I'll tell you something about that. So I'm actually teaching Beat Detective and Elastic Audio at the moment. These particular weeks are about quantizing, and I always find that my students get so many techniques given to them over the course of their 9 weeks advanced mixing module. They want to throw everything into their submissions, and every week I'm reminding I'm just giving you tools that you could potentially use. You don't have to use everything you know on every session that you work on. It's like telling a guitar player you don't have to play every jazz chord in Sweet Home Alabama.
What? No, but Dave, you're absolutely right.
First and foremost, because it's not a jazz song.
but you're absolutely right. But it's the correct place to do that. When you're working on your assignments, that's the correct place to actually gather your thoughts on different techniques and to use them. I think they are doing the right thing, experimenting with all of the tools that you have just given them.
And hopefully we've helped you guys too. This was a simple question from Dana. It was a simple, straightforward question that's loaded. And we talked together and we decided that we were going to basically show all the different facets, or at least 3 big different facets of time and audio. And in the first episode 13, we talked about stretching your audio to match an existing tempo map, right? In the last episode, we talked about conforming to an existing, we talked about conforming to an existing tempo map. And now in this case, we're talking about Beat Detective, which can do a little bit of both, but in a different way. And hopefully with those 3 episodes, we're giving you a view, I think, of the options that you have, and it's up to you as creative people to choose which tool to use at what time. Trust me, all 3 of us do all 3 of these things all the time, but not on all the material. No. Right? We
and less is more. I certainly subscribe to the whole less is more theory.
And while talking about subscribing to stuff, Dave, I think you have an announcement to make.
I do. If you haven't yet done so, everyone, if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, we would definitely appreciate it. If you fancy heading over to protoolsanswers.com, you can subscribe over there. If you are liking what we're doing and you want to support us, we have our Patreon account up and running now. Various different tiers of support that you can give us, and varying benefits that you get as an additional bonus, as an additional thank you for supporting us. One of which includes having a beer with Andy.
One.
Me and Anders would be there as well, but you get the advantage of meeting Andy face to face.
I'm really looking forward to this. This is happy hour with Pro Tools Answers. This is going to be great. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
So please do subscribe, and also with the videos, hit the bell icon so that you get notifications of every video that we release. We typically release on a schedule every Sunday. Occasionally we'll drop some additional stuff as something might cross our desk, or we feel that we want you to know about something, but typically it's once a week. And hopefully you are enjoying what we're doing and learning a load from the things that we're showing you. So all leaves me to say is thank you to Anders.
Thank you.
And thank you to Andy.
You betcha.
My name is Dave. This is Pro Tools Answers. Show us your plug-in, you dirty monkey.